First contact. In a distant part of the galaxy, far away from Earth, Captain Mark Daniels stood aboard the sleek, silver spaceship that represented the human race. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Alliance, a council made up of different alien species. The goal was to create peace and cooperation, but Mark knew the aliens didn't know much about humans yet. He was here to change that. The door of the ship opened with a soft hiss, revealing a massive, brightly lit hall on the alien ship. The walls gleamed with a soft blue light, and hovering orbs floated in the air, casting gentle shadows. Mark stepped out, wearing his formal ambassador uniform, his boots clinking softly on the metal floor. He was followed closely by his crew, all of whom were eager to make a good impression. Ahead of him stood a group of aliens, each more unique and strange than the last. Some had long, tentacle-like arms, while others were covered in scales that shimmered in the light. Their eyes glowed, and their faces showed a mix of curiosity and caution. The leader of the group, a tall alien named Zorak, stepped forward. His skin was green, with dark stripes running down his arms, and his voice was deep and resonant. "Welcome, human," Zorak said, his glowing eyes narrowing as he studied Mark. "We have heard much about your kind, but we have never truly understood you." Mark smiled warmly, stepping forward without hesitation. He extended his hand for a handshake, a gesture that seemed so normal to him, but caused murmurs among the aliens. They had never seen this type of greeting before. Zorak hesitated for a moment, but then extended one of his arms, touching Mark's hand awkwardly. "Thank you for having us," Mark said with genuine kindness. "We come in peace, to learn from one another." Zorak looked confused, but before he could speak, another alien entered the hall. It was a Grillex, a large, intimidating creature known for its dangerous, toxic skin. Its body was covered in thick, black armor-like plates, and its glowing red eyes scanned the room. Everyone in the hall stiffened. The Grillex was infamous for being untouchable. Any alien that came into contact with its skin would suffer terrible burns. But Mark, being unaware of this danger, did something that shocked the entire room. He approached the Grillex without fear, smiling at the towering creature. "Hey there, big guy," Mark said softly. He raised his hand and gently patted the Grillex on its arm. The room fell completely silent. The aliens were frozen in place, their wide eyes watching as Mark continued to stroke the Grillex as if it were a harmless pet. The Grillex, which normally would have lashed out in anger, remained still. In fact, it even lowered its massive head slightly, seemingly enjoying the attention. Zorak and the other aliens exchanged stunned glances. No one had ever dared to touch a Grillex, let alone make one calm. What was this strange power the humans possessed? Mark, noticing the shocked expressions on the aliens' faces, turned around, still smiling. "What's wrong?" he asked, completely unaware of the incredible thing he had just done. "This guy's pretty friendly." Zorak blinked, his alien mind racing to process what he had just seen. You touched the Grillex. It didn't harm you. How is this possible?" he asked, his voice filled with confusion and awe. Mark looked at the Grillex and shrugged. "I guess we humans just have a way with creatures," he said simply. "Back on Earth, we've been living with animals for centuries. Cats, dogs, horses, you name it. Maybe we're just good at making friends with all kinds of beings." The aliens began to murmur amongst themselves. Zorak's eyes narrowed again, but this time there was a hint of respect in his gaze. "Fascinating," he said softly. "Your species, it is different from what we expected. You are not just explorers, you are companions to other life forms." Mark laughed lightly. "I guess you could say that. We humans like to connect with the world around us." Zorak stepped back and turned to his fellow council members. "We must observe this further," he said quietly. Then, looking back at Mark, he added, "There is much we can learn from your kind, Captain Daniels." Perhaps more than we initially thought. Mark nodded, still unaware of how much he had impressed them. He was just being himself, after all. But to the aliens, it was as if they had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans, it seemed, had the ability to connect with creatures in ways no other species could. As Mark and his crew were led deeper into the ship, the aliens continued to watch them with growing fascination. What else were humans capable of? Could they really bond with any creature, no matter how dangerous? One thing was certain: this first contact was unlike any the Galactic Alliance had ever experienced. And for the first time, the aliens began to see humans as something more than just another species. They were beginning to see them as remarkable, capable of connecting with life in a way that no one else could. The Galactic Council's curiosity. After the surprising encounter with Captain Mark Daniels and his crew, word quickly spread through the Galactic Alliance. The story of how a human casually petted a dangerous Grillex without being harmed left many alien leaders in shock. The Galactic Council, the ruling body of the Alliance, called an emergency meeting to discuss what had happened. Inside the council chambers, a grand circular room with glowing panels on the walls, sat representatives from various alien species. Zorak, the tall, green-skinned alien who had witnessed Mark's encounter firsthand, stood at the center. His expression was serious as he addressed the council members. "We must talk about the humans," Zorak said firmly. "What happened yesterday defies all logic. A human, this Captain Daniels, touched a Grillex, and the Grillex did not attack. In fact, it appeared to enjoy the human's touch." There were murmurs from the council members, each one representing a different species. The council leader, a wise, ancient alien named Arvak, leaned forward, his silver eyes glinting with interest. His long, flowing robes shimmered as he moved. "Tell us more, Zorak," Arvak said in a calm, yet commanding tone. Zorak nodded and continued. "The humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They seem to have a strange connection with living creatures. They approach dangerous animals without fear, and somehow, those creatures do not harm them. This is not just with the Grillex. I have heard other stories of humans interacting with ferocious creatures from other planets." Another council member, a short, bug-like alien named Creek, clicked his mandibles in disbelief. "Impossible," he chirped. "The Grillex is known to be untouchable. No being has ever survived touching its toxic skin." Zorak raised his hand to calm Creek down. "I saw it with my own eyes. The human captain not only touched the Grillex, but petted it as if it were a harmless pet." Arvak sat back in his chair, deep in thought. "This is most unusual," he muttered. "Perhaps there is something unique about the humans, something we do not yet understand." A tall, reptilian alien named Riven, who had always been skeptical of humans, spoke up. "We need to test them," he hissed. "This could be some trick, some manipulation we do not see. I suggest we conduct an experiment, something that will prove whether or not these humans truly have this ability." The room fell silent as the council considered Riven's words. Zorak, although more trusting of humans after witnessing their behavior, agreed that a test would be useful. "I believe we should invite the humans to a more controlled environment," Zorak suggested. "Perhaps we could take them to the Galactic Zoo." At the mention of the zoo, several council members looked nervous. The Galactic Zoo was not an ordinary zoo. It housed some of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Each species in the zoo had been carefully contained because of its aggressive nature. Even the most skilled handlers kept their distance from the creatures. Arvak smiled slightly, his silver eyes narrowing. "The Galactic Zoo," he repeated slowly. "Yes, that could provide us with answers. If the humans can interact with those creatures without harm, we will know for sure." The decision was made. A message was sent to Captain Mark Daniels, inviting him and his crew to visit the Galactic Zoo as honored guests. Little did Mark know that the council members were not just interested in showing him the sights. They were planning to test his ability to connect with dangerous creatures. A few days later, Mark and his crew stood at the entrance to the Galactic Zoo, completely unaware of the hidden motives behind the invitation. The massive gates of the zoo towered above them, and beyond them, they could hear strange, alien roars and growls echoing in the distance. "This is amazing," Mark said, looking around in excitement. "I've never seen anything like this." Beside him, Zorak and several council members observed quietly, their eyes fixed on Mark. They had prepared for this moment carefully, selecting the most dangerous creatures in the zoo for the humans to encounter. As they walked deeper into the zoo, Zorak stopped at the first enclosure. Inside was a creature known as the slink. It was a large, snake-like being with shimmering scales that could change color. The slink was known for its deadly venom. Just one bite could kill an alien in seconds. Mark peered into the enclosure, fascinated by the creature. "What's this little guy's name?" he asked, as if he were looking at a harmless puppy. Zorak raised an eyebrow. "That is a slink. It is highly venomous. No one has ever survived its bite." Mark, with his usual friendly smile, shrugged and said, "Well, let's see if it's friendly." Without waiting for a response, he leaned over the edge of the enclosure and extended his hand. The slink slithered forward, its scales shifting from green to deep purple. The council members watched in horror, fully expecting the slink to strike. But instead, the creature moved closer to Mark and gently nuzzled his hand, its body vibrating with a soft purring sound. The council members gasped. Zorak's eyes widened in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. Mark turned back to Zorak, still petting the slink. "Seems like he just needed a little attention," Mark said, grinning. They moved on to the next enclosure, where a massive, fire-breathing Draknar awaited. Mark, as always, approached it without fear. The Draknar, instead of attacking, allowed Mark to gently rub its scaled head, its flames dying down as if soothed by his presence. The council members were speechless. Every test they threw at Mark, every dangerous creature they put in his path, he passed with ease. The humans truly did have a unique connection with these creatures. As they left the zoo, Zorak and the other council members exchanged glances. Their curiosity about humans had only grown. What was the secret behind their ability to bond with creatures that no other species could? They needed to learn more, and fast. The Galactic Council's curiosity was now at its peak. And this was only the beginning. Captain Mark Daniels and his crew stood at the entrance of the Galactic Zoo, gazing in awe at the massive structure before them. It was unlike any zoo on Earth. Towering walls of shimmering metal and energy fields surrounded the enclosures, and strange, alien sounds echoed from within. The Galactic Zoo was home to the most dangerous and exotic creatures in the galaxy, beings no other species dared to interact with up close. Mark adjusted his jacket, looking excited rather than nervous. "Well, this is going to be fun," he said with a grin. His crew exchanged uncertain glances, less sure about how fun it would be. Zorak, the tall, green-skinned alien who had been their guide since their arrival, stood beside them. His glowing eyes studied Mark with a mixture of fascination and caution. The council had sent him to observe the humans closely. The encounter with the Groleks had raised many questions, and the Galactic Council was eager to understand what made these humans so different. "Captain Daniels," Zorak began, his deep voice echoing slightly in the wide-open space, "this zoo is not like any you may have seen. The creatures here are not just dangerous. They are uncontrollable by any known species. I suggest you proceed with extreme caution." Mark simply smiled. "Don't worry. We'll be fine. We've got a way with animals," he said confidently, as though walking into a zoo full of deadly creatures was a casual afternoon activity. The group moved forward, led by Zorak. As they entered the zoo, the first enclosure they approached was massive, surrounded by high walls and glowing force fields. Inside, a towering creature known as a Draknar prowled. It was a terrifying sight. Covered in black, stone-like scales with glowing red eyes and massive wings. Flames flickered from its mouth as it snarled and paced, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. One of Mark's crew members, a biologist named Sarah, whispered nervously, "That thing looks like it could melt us with one breath." Zorak glanced at them and nodded. The Draknar is one of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Its breath can ignite entire forests, and no species has ever tamed it. Approach with care. But before Zorak could finish his warning, Mark stepped right up to the force field, his eyes fixed on the Draknar. "Hey, big guy," he called out cheerfully, as though he were greeting a friendly neighborhood dog. Zorak and the rest of the crew held their breath. The Draknar stopped in its tracks, its fiery eyes locked onto Mark. Slowly, it moved toward him, its nostrils flaring with hot air. Mark, completely unfazed, reached out his hand toward the creature. "It's okay," he said in a calm, soothing voice. "I won't hurt you." To everyone's shock, the Draknar, this beast feared by countless species, lowered its massive head and allowed Mark's hand to rest on its snout. The flames in its mouth died down, and it let out a low, rumbling purr, like a giant, satisfied cat. Zorak's mouth hung open in disbelief. This cannot be," he exclaimed. "The Draknar is untamable. How is it possible that you—" Mark chuckled, patting the Draknar gently. "We humans have a way with creatures," he said, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. The crew members stared in awe, while Zorak quickly scribbled notes into his data pad, his mind racing to understand what he had just witnessed. After spending a few more minutes with the now docile Draknar, Mark led the group to the next enclosure. Inside, a creature known as a Volrax slithered across the ground. The Volrax was a long, serpent-like creature with glowing blue scales that could emit powerful electric shocks. It was known for being aggressive, attacking anything that came near it. Zorak looked at Mark nervously. "Captain, I must advise against approaching the Volrax. It has killed many handlers in the past. Its electrical shocks are lethal." Mark, however, was undeterred. He walked right up to the enclosure, kneeling down to get a closer look at the Volrax. The snake-like creature hissed, its scales crackling with energy as it sensed Mark's presence. But instead of retreating or attacking, the Volrax hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing. "I know you're not as scary as you look," Mark said softly, extending his hand once again. The Volrax slithered closer, its electric charge dimming. Slowly, it curled around Mark's arm, its body glowing softly, as if it were bonding with him. The aliens watching from behind the barrier could hardly believe their eyes. Zorak, his confusion growing, approached Mark carefully. "Captain, how do you do this? What is your secret? No other species in the galaxy can tame these creatures, yet you humans seem to connect with them so effortlessly." Mark shrugged, still gently petting the Volrax. "I don't know if there's a secret. I guess we humans just have a knack for bonding with animals. Maybe it's because we've lived with them for so long on Earth. Dogs, cats, even wild animals. We've always found a way to live alongside them." Zorak was silent for a moment, processing this information. "Perhaps there is more to your species than we first thought," he said thoughtfully. "You may possess an ability we have yet to understand." As they continued their tour of the zoo, Mark and his crew encountered several more dangerous creatures. A razor-toothed Xark, a hulking Terosian beast, and even a flock of venomous Kyrex birds. In each case, Mark approached the creatures with the same calm, friendly demeanor, and in each case, the creatures responded to him, becoming docile in his presence. By the end of the tour, the Galactic Council members who had been observing from afar were in a state of shock. No species had ever interacted with the zoo's creatures in this way. The humans, it seemed, had a unique gift, one that could potentially change the way the Galactic Alliance viewed their role in the galaxy. As Mark and his crew left the zoo, Zorak walked beside him, his mind still racing. "Captain Daniels," he said quietly, "you and your crew have shown us something remarkable today. The Council will need time to process what we have learned, but one thing is clear. Humans are unlike any species we have ever encountered. Mark smiled, looking back at the zoo behind them. We're just getting started, Zorak. Word spreads across the galaxy. It didn't take long for the story of Captain Mark Daniels and his crew's visit to the Galactic Zoo to spread across the galaxy like wildfire. What had started as a quiet curiosity among the Galactic Council turned into a sensation that rippled through every corner of the galaxy. Aliens from all walks of life were buzzing with excitement, disbelief, and fascination about one strange fact. Humans could connect with the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. On distant planets, in space stations, and among the many ships that traveled between the stars, the name Mark Daniels became synonymous with something beyond comprehension. Holoscreens flashed the image of Mark petting the fearsome Draknar, while news networks played videos of him calming the electric Volrax. Everyone had one question on their minds. How could humans, so physically weak compared to other species, do the impossible? On the planet Veltar 9, a bustling trade hub on the edge of the galaxy, alien merchants gathered at a cantina, chattering loudly about the humans. A blue-skinned merchant named Tak slammed his drink on the table, shaking his head in disbelief. "There's no way it's true," Tak said, his many eyes blinking in frustration. "No one can tame a Draknar, let alone a Volrax. The council must be exaggerating." Across the table, a large, furry alien named Grawl chuckled. "I don't know, Tak. There's footage. Everyone's seen it. That human captain made the creatures purr like pets. You can't deny the evidence." A third alien, a slender creature with long, spindly arms, leaned in and whispered, "I heard the Council is considering making humans official creature handlers for the Galactic Alliance." Imagine that. Humans leading dangerous expeditions into uncharted territories, protecting us from the galaxy's most dangerous wildlife. The idea of humans being entrusted with such responsibility seemed absurd to some, but exciting to others. There had never been a species in the Alliance with such a natural ability to bond with other life forms. Discussions like this echoed in every spaceport, every corner of the galaxy. Back on Earth, Mark Daniels and his crew were completely unaware of the chaos their actions had sparked across the stars. They were enjoying a much-needed break after their long journey. The crew, while amazed at the attention they had received during their visit to the zoo, hadn't fully grasped the scale of their impact. "Can you believe it?" Sarah, the crew's biologist, said as she sipped her coffee. "We're like galactic celebrities now. I keep getting messages from alien scientists asking how we did it." Mark leaned back in his chair, a smirk on his face. "Well, I always knew we'd make a name for ourselves one day. Just didn't think it'd be for cuddling alien monsters." The crew laughed, but the truth was sinking in. Their simple, natural interactions with creatures had caused a seismic shift in how humans were perceived throughout the galaxy. What had once been skepticism or even dismissal was quickly turning into admiration, and in some places, fear. On the distant planet Xivan, home to the powerful and secretive Xivan Dominion, the news had reached the ruling class. The Xivan were a species known for their strict control over other life forms. They had long used genetically modified beasts to maintain power and protect their empire. But now, the rise of humans as potential creature tamers unsettled them. In a darkened room, the High Leader of the Xivan, a tall, silver-skinned being with glowing red eyes, sat on his throne. Before him, a council of advisors whispered among themselves, clearly disturbed by the recent developments. "These humans, they pose a threat to the order of things," one of the advisors hissed. "If they can control beasts, what's to stop them from turning those creatures against us?" The High Leader raised his hand, silencing the room. "Humans," he said softly, his voice cold and calculating, "may prove to be more valuable than we first thought. We must learn more about their abilities. If they can control the beasts of the galaxy, perhaps they can be made to serve us." The Xivan Dominion was not the only faction watching the humans closely. Several other galactic powers, some more aggressive than others, began discussing what this new development meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. On the central world of the Galactic Alliance, the news had reached every level of society. Inside the Grand Council chambers, representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss what should be done. The question was no longer if humans were special. It was what the galaxy should do with this knowledge. Zorak, who had witnessed Mark's abilities firsthand, stood before the council, once again giving a report. "Honorable members of the council," he began, "I have observed the humans closely. There is no doubt that they possess a unique connection with creatures, a connection no other species has demonstrated. This ability could prove invaluable to the Galactic Alliance, especially in dealing with the creatures that reside in the unexplored territories of the galaxy." Council members murmured among themselves. Some, like Creek, the small insectoid alien, were still skeptical. "But how do we know they can be trusted?" Creek chirped. "What if they use this ability for their own gain? What if they turn these creatures against us?" Another member, a blue-skinned aquatic being named Talna, disagreed. "The humans have shown nothing but goodwill. We should embrace this discovery and find ways to work with them." The council leader, Arvak, sat quietly, listening to the debate. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. "The Galactic Alliance has long prided itself on cooperation and mutual respect between species. The humans have shown us something remarkable. Whether we understand it fully or not, we cannot ignore it. I propose we invite the humans to be official members of the Galactic Council so that we may learn from them and continue our peaceful exploration of the galaxy." The room fell silent. The idea of humans, a species once considered inferior in the grand scheme of galactic politics, now being invited to join the council, was revolutionary. But the galaxy was changing, and the council knew they had to adapt. As the discussions and debates raged on across the galaxy, Mark and his crew continued their day-to-day lives, unaware of the storm they had stirred. They had touched the hearts of creatures feared by millions, and in doing so, they had unknowingly shifted the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. One thing was certain: the name of Captain Mark Daniels and the humans would be remembered for generations to come. The galaxy, once vast and divided, now had a common curiosity that brought all species together. Just how far could the humans go? Alien skepticism and a new test. The Galactic Alliance may have been intrigued by the humans' abilities, but not everyone was convinced. As news spread of Captain Mark Daniels and his crew taming the most dangerous creatures in the Galactic Zoo, a wave of skepticism followed. Some believed the footage had been manipulated. Others speculated that humans were hiding some kind of advanced technology that allowed them to control the creatures. On planets throughout the galaxy, debates rage. Some aliens saw the humans as an opportunity, a species that could help them explore the untamed corners of the universe. But many were wary. If humans could bond with beasts so easily, could they also weaponize this talent? One of the most vocal critics was General Krass of the Varlock Dominion, a fierce warrior species known for their strict military discipline and conquest. The Varlock believed strength and domination were the true signs of superiority. To them, the idea that humans, a weak, soft species in their eyes, could simply cuddle their way into controlling dangerous beasts was laughable. From the Varlock homeworld of Korath 7, General Krass sent a direct message to the Galactic Council, demanding a real test for the humans. These so-called tamers have been given far too much credit for a few lucky encounters. Krass barked in his transmission, his 4 red eyes narrowing in suspicion. If the humans are truly capable of controlling the beasts of the galaxy, let them prove it under real conditions, not in a controlled zoo, but in the wild, where the creatures are at their most dangerous. If they succeed, we will consider them worthy allies. If they fail, then the galaxy will know they are frauds. The message reverberated across the stars. Many species agreed that the humans needed to prove themselves beyond a few zoo encounters. The Galactic Council, after much deliberation, decided to arrange a new test. This time, the challenge would take place on a remote planet, known as Araxis Prime, where the wildlife was not only dangerous but unpredictable. Captain Mark Daniels stood on the bridge of his ship, the Starlight Eagle, as he read the council's message. The crew had grown used to the attention they received after the zoo incident, but this was different. This time, the stakes were higher. They would be facing creatures in the wild, without the protection of force fields or barriers. "Looks like we're being called out," Mark said, his usual lighthearted tone replaced with a hint of seriousness. "The Varlock want to see if we can handle ourselves outside the zoo. They've arranged for us to go to Araxis Prime." Sarah, the biologist, frowned as she studied the planet's profile on her tablet. "Araxis Prime is a nightmare," she said. "The creatures there are even more unpredictable than what we saw at the zoo. Extreme weather, hostile environments. It's not just the animals that'll be a threat." "Great," said Max, their engineer, rubbing the back of his neck. "As if taming a fire-breathing lizard wasn't enough, now we have to do it while dodging lightning storms." Mark smiled, trying to ease the tension. "We've got this, guys. If we can handle a Draknar, we can handle anything Araxis Prime throws at us." A few days later, the Starlight Eagle touched down on the surface of Araxis Prime, a world of untamed wilderness. Jagged mountains loomed in the distance, and thick forests stretched out in every direction. The air was heavy with moisture, and dark storm clouds hung low in the sky. Alien creatures, some large and some hidden, moved through the underbrush. Their cries echoed across the rugged landscape. As Mark and his crew disembarked, they were greeted by Zorak, the Galactic Council's appointed observer for the mission. The tall, green-skinned alien had been a key figure in introducing the humans to the Council, and he seemed eager to see how they would handle the new test. "Captain Daniels," Zorak said, nodding in greeting, "the Council has chosen 3 creatures for you to tame. These creatures are considered among the most dangerous on Araxis Prime. The Varlock have personally selected them to ensure the challenge is adequate." Mark grinned, sensing the tension. "I take it they don't want us to win." Zorak didn't smile. "The Varlock believe only in strength and survival. They will be watching closely." The first creature they encountered was a massive beast known as a Karkal, a towering armored quadruped with sharp, spiked legs and a mouth filled with serrated teeth. It was said to be one of the most aggressive creatures on Araxis Prime, known for charging at anything it deemed a threat. Mark and his team stood a few hundred meters away, hidden behind a large rock formation as they watched the Karkal dig into the ground, searching for food. It let out deep, guttural growls, its spiked tail thrashing through the air. "Well, here goes nothing," Mark said, taking a deep breath. Zorak watched from a distance, his arms crossed as Mark walked slowly toward the Karkal. The ground trembled slightly with each step of the beast, and it wasn't long before it noticed Mark's approach. The Karkal raised its head, its black, gleaming eyes narrowing in on the human. Without hesitation, the massive creature let out a deafening roar and charged straight at Mark, its spiked legs digging into the earth with terrifying speed. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mark, get out of there." But Mark stood his ground, holding up his hands and speaking in a calm, even tone. "Easy now. You don't need to do that," he said, his voice steady. For a brief moment, it seemed like the Karkal would crush him. But just as the beast was about to strike, it stopped. Its eyes, wild with aggression, softened as it took in Mark's presence. It lowered its head slightly, snorting, as if confused by its own actions. Mark took a step forward, reaching out his hand, just as he had with the Draknar. "See, we're not so different," he said, his voice barely a whisper. The Karkal, a creature feared by the galaxy for its sheer violence, slowly leaned forward, letting Mark touch the rough, armored skin of its head. Zorak's eyes widened in shock, but before he could react, the ground shook again. This time, it wasn't the Karkal, it was a pack of wild Narlax beasts, slithering out from the nearby trees. These creatures, with their 6-legged, serpent-like bodies, were known for their speed and venomous bite. Mark didn't hesitate. With the same calm, collected demeanor, he approached the pack leader. The Narlax hissed, baring its venomous fangs, but something about Mark's presence seemed to pacify it. Slowly, the creature's muscles relaxed, and it let out a low hiss that sounded more like a purr. Back at the Varlock base, General Crass watched the live transmission with growing disbelief. The humans were not only surviving, they were thriving. Every creature they encountered, no matter how dangerous, seemed to respond to their strange, inexplicable connection. The Varlock general slammed his fist on the table, his red eyes glowing with frustration. This can't be possible. No species can tame these beasts. There must be something else. But no matter how much the Varlock doubted, the results were undeniable. The humans had passed the test. As the mission on Araxis Prime came to an end, Mark and his crew returned to the Starlight Eagle. They were greeted by Zorak, who couldn't hide his admiration. "Captain Daniels," he said, "you and your crew have done something extraordinary. The Council will have no choice but to recognize the humans as a vital part of the Galactic Alliance." Mark smiled, looking back at the wild terrain of Araxis Prime. "We're just doing what we do best, making friends with creatures, no matter where they come from." But as they prepared to leave, one thing became clear. Humans were no longer just a curiosity. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The day had finally come. After weeks of trials, debates, and galactic speculation, humans were officially recognized by the Galactic Alliance. The council chambers on the capital planet, Orevan, were bustling with activity. Representatives from every known species in the galaxy had gathered for a grand celebration. It was a historic moment. The first time humans were formally included in the Galactic Alliance, a union of planets that had existed for millennia. The Starlight Eagle docked smoothly at the grand spaceport, its sleek hull gleaming under the twin suns of Orevan. Captain Mark Daniels and his crew had been invited as honored guests for the galactic celebration. They were heroes now, not just for taming the wild creatures of Araxis Prime, but for proving humanity's worth among the stars. As Mark stepped off the ship with his crew, he was greeted by a sea of alien faces. Creatures from every corner of the galaxy stood in awe, whispering and pointing at the humans. It was clear that their reputation had grown to legendary proportions. "Well, this is different," Mark said with a smirk, adjusting his jacket. "Feels like we're walking into a royal parade." Beside him, Sarah looked around in wonder. "I can't believe how far we've come. First contact feels like a lifetime ago." Max, the ship's engineer, grinned. "Yeah, who would have thought we'd go from cuddling dangerous creatures to being the stars of the galaxy?" They were soon escorted by a delegation of tall, golden-skinned aliens who led them into the grand hall of the council. Inside, the enormous chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of species, all gathered to witness the humans' official induction into the Alliance. At the front of the hall, Zorak, the green-skinned ambassador, who had been with Mark's crew since the beginning, stood waiting. He was now one of humanity's biggest supporters, having seen firsthand their unique abilities and their potential to bring something new to the galaxy. The council leader, Arvak, a towering figure with shimmering silver skin and deep, wise eyes, stood at the podium. He raised his arms to signal the start of the ceremony, and the room fell into a respectful silence. Today, Arvak's voice boomed, echoing throughout the grand hall. "We gather to honor the humans of Earth, a species that has shown us the power of compassion, courage, and connection. In our long history, we have encountered many extraordinary beings, but none have demonstrated the unique ability to bond with the creatures of the galaxy like these humans." Mark shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to such attention, but he knew this moment wasn't just about him. It was about humanity's place in the galaxy. Through their actions, Captain Mark Daniels and his crew have shown us that no matter how dangerous or untamable a creature may seem, there is always a way to connect, Arvak continued. "For this reason, we welcome humanity as full members of the Galactic Alliance." The room erupted into applause. Aliens of all shapes and sizes clapped, cheered, and even howled in approval. The once doubtful council members now stood in admiration. Even Creek, the small insectoid representative who had been so skeptical of humans, gave a respectful nod. Mark stepped forward as the applause continued, accepting a ceremonial token from Arvak, a small glowing sphere that symbolized unity and peace within the alliance. As he held it up, the crowd roared even louder. After the formal ceremony, the real celebration began. The grand hall was transformed into a festival of lights, colors, and sounds, unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Long tables were laid out with exotic foods from dozens of planets, everything from shimmering fruits to strange, bubbling liquids. "Whoa," Max said, eyeing a plate of what looked like floating purple jelly. "What do you think this is?" "I'd be careful," Sarah warned, laughing. "Not everything here is safe for human consumption." As the humans mingled with the alien guests, the air buzzed with excitement. Delegates from distant planets eagerly approached them, each one offering congratulations or asking about Earth and its creatures. It seemed everyone wanted a piece of the humans now. "You must tell me," a small, aquatic alien gurgled as it floated over to Sarah. "How did you bond with the Volrax? Our people have tried for centuries with no success." A new era of unity. The morning after the galactic celebration, a quiet calm settled over the city of Orevan. The twin suns had just begun to rise, casting a soft golden light over the sprawling metropolis. But this day was different. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for the humans, but for the entire Galactic Alliance. Captain Mark Daniels stood on the balcony of the guest quarters, gazing out over the city. The events of the past few weeks played over in his mind: the trials at the Galactic Zoo, the mission on Araxis Prime, the skepticism from the Varlock, and finally, the celebration. Humanity had been tested and had proven its worth. But now that the celebrations were over, the real work was about to begin. The door behind him slid open, and Sarah, his trusted biologist and friend, stepped out to join him. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, leaning on the railing beside him. Mark shook his head, a small smile on his lips. "Too much on my mind. Yesterday was a big deal, but it feels like there's more ahead. We've earned a place in the galaxy, but now we have to figure out what to do with it." Sarah nodded. "You're right. Joining the Galactic Alliance is just the first step. There's so much more we can do. New species to meet, new planets to explore, and a lot of bridges to build." Later that day, the Galactic Council convened for a special meeting, this time to discuss the future of the newly expanded alliance. The Grand Hall, where only yesterday the celebration had taken place, was now filled with representatives ready to chart a new course for the galaxy. Mark and his crew had been invited to sit in on the session. Though they weren't council members, their presence was requested as a symbol of the new era that humanity represented. Council leader Arvak took his place at the head of the room, his silver skin glowing softly under the council lights. He addressed the assembly with his deep, resonant voice. "Yesterday we celebrated the induction of humanity into our alliance. Today we begin to discuss what comes next. The humans have shown us that there are new ways to connect with the life forms of this galaxy. Their ability to bond with creatures previously thought untamable has opened doors we never thought possible. But there are still questions that need answering." A representative from the peaceful Telsar race stood up. Her crystalline wings shimmered as she spoke. "We believe that the humans' empathy and understanding of other life forms could be used to establish peaceful relations with hostile species. If they can connect with dangerous creatures, perhaps they can do the same with more aggressive civilizations." The hall buzzed with agreement. The idea of using humans as ambassadors of peace was gaining traction. After all, their unique ability to communicate with all forms of life, whether beast or alien, was something no other species in the galaxy possessed. Zorak, the green-skinned ambassador who had supported the humans from the beginning, rose to his feet. "I agree with the Telsar representative. Humans have the potential to bridge gaps between civilizations. In the past, we have seen conflicts between races escalate due to misunderstandings. Perhaps the humans can help prevent such conflicts by fostering understanding. Mark exchanged a glance with Sarah, feeling the weight of the council's words. This was more than just a recognition of humanity's talents. It was a call to action. After the council meeting, Mark and his crew returned to the Starlight Eagle, where they gathered to discuss what had transpired. "Well, it sounds like they want us to be some kind of galactic diplomats," Max said, sitting at the ship's console. "Ambassadors for peace and all that." Mark nodded, leaning back in his chair. "It's a lot of responsibility, but it makes sense. We've proven we can handle ourselves, not just with creatures, but with people too. If we can help bring peace to the galaxy, I say we give it a shot." Sarah agreed, her eyes thoughtful. "It won't be easy. There are still a lot of species out there that see us as a threat. The Varlock, for example. They're not just going to change their minds because we passed a few tests. But if we can show them that humanity can be trusted, it could change everything." Mark smiled. "We've always been good at defying expectations. I say we take this opportunity and run with it." Over the next few months, humanity's role in the Galactic Alliance began to take shape. The Council created a new division, the Unity Initiative, focused on fostering cooperation between different species, with humans at the forefront. Captain Mark Daniels and his crew were appointed as official ambassadors of the initiative, tasked with traveling to various planets to help resolve conflicts and build alliances. Their first mission under the new role took them to the Varlock Dominion. Despite the lingering skepticism from General Krass and his people, the Council believed that the Varlock could benefit from a peaceful relationship with humanity. As the Starlight Eagle approached Korath 7, the Varlock homeworld, Mark couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The Varlock were not known for their diplomacy. Their society valued strength, conquest, and dominance. But Mark was determined to show them that humanity's strength came from something deeper than brute force. When they landed, General Krass was waiting for them, his red eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I hope you understand, human," Krass said as Mark approached, "that we do not easily change our ways. Your peaceful approach may work with creatures, but it will not sway warriors." Mark met his gaze, calm and unflinching. "I'm not here to change who you are, General. I'm here to show you that strength doesn't always come from fighting. Sometimes it comes from understanding." Krass raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The real test was yet to come. Over time, Mark and his crew demonstrated their abilities not just with creatures, but with the Varlock themselves. They didn't try to overpower them or force them into submission. Instead, they approached with respect, listening to their concerns, and slowly but surely earning their trust. The Varlock, known for their ferocity, began to see the humans in a new light, not as weaklings, but as equals who possessed a different kind of strength. It wasn't easy, and it took months of careful diplomacy, but eventually, the Varlock agreed to join the Unity Initiative, marking the first step in a new era of cooperation between species that had once been enemies. As the Starlight Eagle departed from Korath 7, Mark sat in the captain's chair, a sense of accomplishment washing over him. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but humanity had proven time and time again that they could rise to the occasion. Sarah smiled at him from the science station. "So what's next, Captain?" Mark grinned. "Who knows? The galaxy's a big place. But one thing's for sure, we're just getting started." And with that, the humans set off on their next adventure, ready to continue building a new era of unity among the stars. The galaxy had changed forever, and humanity was at the heart of it.